I'm a volunteer firefighter in a tiny town in West Virginia and have been for just over 3 years. I joined when I was 16, a guy eager to serve, and now I'm 20. Our station was built back in 1974, and since then, we've lost 8 members of the department, 2 of them since I started. We lost 2 incredible men in March 2018 during a fire truck wreck while they were on duty. In that wrecked fire truck, there are 2 seats up front, with the engine nestled between them. Right behind those are 2 more seats facing out the back on either side of the motor, and then 2 seats in the middle rear of the cab that face forward. That day, our chief at the time, retired now, a man named Elton, was driving. The assistant chief, Thane, who's no longer with us, rode in the passenger seat, the hot seat. Our lieutenant, Gideon, also deceased, sat in the rear-facing seat on the passenger side. The chief engineer, a guy we called Soren, was in the rear-facing seat on the driver's side, and one of our younger firefighters, a 17-year-old named Kellen, sat in the middle seat facing the front. If you know anything about the fire service or fire trucks, you'd recognize this setup as a custom engine. Thane and Gideon, both on the passenger side, died instantly when the truck veered off the road and smashed into a rock outcrop on a mountainside. Everyone else made it out, 2 with serious, life-threatening injuries, and 1 with just a broken arm that I'm telling you that to set up this next part, which isn't my story but belongs to Elton, the former chief who was behind the wheel that day. One night, Elton was dozing on the couch in our station when he was jolted awake by a voice, our old chief, a man named Roderick, telling him to get up because we had a call. Elton opened his eyes, looked around, and saw no one. The radio was silent, and the siren on the building wasn't blaring. Thinking it was just a dream, he settled back to sleep. About 30 seconds later, though, he was woken again, this time by the station tones ringing out and the dispatcher's voice crackling over the radio, announcing a structure fire for our crew. The eerie part? Roderick, the chief who'd woken him, had passed away back in 1996. This happened in 2007. Knowing now that the station's haunted, not by malevolent spirits, but by the souls of our fallen brothers, brings me a strange kind of comfort. I feel like they're watching over us when we head out on calls. We even leave a spot open for them on the trucks when we roll out. Being a small volunteer station, we don't have a big crew. We don't get paid for this. It's all on top of our regular full-time jobs. So, now onto my story. It was Halloween night, 2019. I was upstairs in our pool room with one of our probationary members, a guy named Torrin. We were sitting at the pool table, and I was helping him study for his Mod 1 test the next evening. We were the only 2 in the building. That night, the nighttime officer in town texted us, asking if we'd come down and let him in to grab a snack from the vending machine. We both headed downstairs, and while we were chatting with him, there was a lull in the conversation. The building went quiet, until something cut through the silence. Before we'd come down, we'd left all the pool balls in the pockets and the cover on the table. But then we started hearing the pool balls clacking against each other, like someone had kicked off a game. We were the only ones there, and the only way into the building was the door we were standing right in front of. We went back upstairs, the officer trailing along, and searched every inch of the upper level. Nothing except the cover of the pool table crumpled on the floor, and the balls scattered across the table, like someone had broken them out and started playing, even though no one had touched a damn thing. I know it was one of the guys who still hang around the station in the afterlife, but it's still creepy as hell knowing they're there and can fuck with us like that. They don't want us gone. They just like messing with us, I guess. It was their thing when they were alive. And to be clear, in my time at the station, I think it was Thane and Gideon, the 2 who died in that crash I told you about. They were both huge pranksters. It was the spring of 2016. I was 17 years old, and let's just say I was a pretty rebellious teenager. I'd started getting tattoos behind my parents' backs in some guy's basement. Dumb, I know. While I was getting 2 pieces done, My tattoo artist, a guy named Soren, invited some of his buddies over. He was working on my leg piece, which meant I had to roll up my shorts. One of his friends, let's call him Dorian, started hitting on me. I kept my responses short, hoping he'd take the hint that I wasn't in the mood to chat. Soren finished my tattoos, and I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. Dorian followed me out and started asking stuff like, "Do you have a boyfriend? And can I get your number?" I'll admit, he was pretty good looking, so I gave him my number. Later that night, I met up with him. He asked how old I was, and when I said 17, he went quiet. That pause should have been a red flag, but I was young and reckless, so I brushed it off. Then he told me he was 31 and said my age didn't bother him. I was too wild back then to care that this guy was practically twice my age. Fast forward 4 months, and we'd started dating. Things were fine at first, until one day Dorian got really high and accused me of cheating. He got right up in my face, screaming. I was shaking, totally thrown off, and didn't know what to say to his bullshit accusations. They weren't even true. I'd never given him any reason to doubt me, but I ignored the warning signs. Another 2 months went by, and Dorian got obsessive. He'd drive by my house, texting me shit like, "Where are you at?" and "Why aren't you home?" It freaked me out, and I finally snapped, calling him a creep over the phone. That same week, I found out he'd started cozying up to my neighbors. He'd sit on their porches, watching my house, and I didn't even know until he texted me one day, "I see you. Where are you going?" I lost it. I couldn't spot his Jeep anywhere. I texted back, asking where the hell he was, and he said, "Turn around and look up." There he was, perched next to my neighbor, waving at me like some smug asshole. I was pissed, stormed inside, called him, and tore into him. Things only got worse, and I was too stupid to ditch him. Dorian started drugging me on purpose to swipe cash from me. He kept driving by my place, calling me names, still accusing me of cheating. It got so bad I pushed him one day, and he put his hands on me. By September, I was terrified to leave him. That same month, he dragged me to this festival. I figured being around people might keep him from acting like a dick. Wrong. The first night, he got wasted and took his anger out on me for no damn reason. I wasn't about to argue. I walked off and climbed into his truck to cool down. Then, out of nowhere, the door flew open. 2 huge hands grabbed my arm, and I got slammed against the truck. It was Dorian, his face twisted with hate and fury. He smacked me, dragged me into the tent, and locked it from the outside so I couldn't get out. I was freaking out, screaming to be let loose, but no one could hear me over the blaring music. It was dark, and I started crying, begging him to open the damn thing. He eventually came back in, stroking my face, saying how sorry he was, his usual trick to calm me down and make up for his shit. That same year, Dorian pulled the unthinkable. I found out he'd been married for 10 years to the mother of his kids. He'd lied, telling me he was divorced and lived with his grandparents. I'd been to their house tons of times, totally buying it. His wife, a woman named Lysandra, called me up, asking questions. I figured she deserved the truth, so I spilled everything. She told me she was taking him to court to get full custody of their kids and cut him off completely. Dorian was fucking furious. He threatened to shoot up my job, to end my life and his own. That day, after work, I went straight to the police, filed a report, blocked him on everything. He never tried to reach me again. If you're reading this, watch who you let into your life. Run like hell from anyone waving red flags from the jump. I was just a kid, about 15 or 16, when this happened. Back then, pretty much every kid in school or around the neighborhood had some kind of part-time gig. It was just expected. Once you were old enough to push a mower, shovel a driveway, or rake leaves, you spent part of your day earning your own cash. This was way before the internet existed, so having a job was something kids took for granted. Some even loved it. It got you out of the house and put a little money in your pocket. My first part-time job was a classic for that time. I had a newspaper route. That'll tell you how long ago this was. I'm in my late 40s now, but I can still picture myself riding my bike to the corner to pick up the bundle of papers dropped there, counting them to make sure I wasn't shorted, stuffing in whatever flyers were due that day, and pedaling door to door for blocks to drop them off. Those old movies showing a kid zipping down the street, tossing papers every which way as he rides by? Total bullshit. If a kid back then slung newspapers around the neighborhood like that, he'd be out of a job fast. Being a good paper boy was a big deal. You didn't ride over lawns, let your bike crash into bushes, or trample flower beds. This was the suburbs. Everyone was obsessed with their yards looking perfect. The better you treated your customers and their property, the better the tips were when you collected payments each month, and some even tossed you bigger ones at Christmas. They even had trophies for the best paper boy in the county. I won one once, 2 feet tall, fake gold and marble, with a little paperboy figurine on top, bag slung over his shoulder, holding a rolled up paper high. People took this shit seriously. Monday through Friday, I delivered in the afternoon. Saturday and Sunday were the only days the paper went out in the morning. Once I figured out the bundles usually hit the corner by 5 a.m., I'd start my route then. It wasn't about chasing another trophy. I just liked that it was still dark when I got home. I could crash back into bed and wake up whenever, like I'd never had to get up at all. Paperboy logic. This story happened on a Sunday. Sunday papers were the worst. Thick as hell, loaded with inserts, including the comics we still called the funnies. They were so heavy I often had to split the load, leaving half the bundle by the street post on the corner, delivering the first batch, then doubling back for the rest. It was a pain in the ass, but better than hauling a 2-ton bag around and wrecking my back. The first half of my route was mostly apartments, quick and easy. I'd zip into these small 2-story buildings, drop a paper at each door, and zip out. 8 deliveries in under a minute. The second half was houses, spread out across a then sparsely developed area. Right in the middle of my route was a spot called the Horseshoe, a dirt road shaped like a U, with the top ends linking to the main road. You'd ride down one side, curve around, and come up the other. Only 5 houses dotted the Horseshoe, with big gaps between them. There were maybe 1 or 2 street lights, mostly hidden by overhanging tree branches, so it was usually pitch dark. If you didn't know the path by heart, you'd end up in a grove of trees or a ditch. That's why I loved nights with a full moon. The moonlight lit up the houses along that dirt road, making it easier to see. Sometimes, it didn't even feel like night if the moon was bright and the sky was clear. In winter, with fresh snow everywhere, a full moon made the route damn near glowing. But this one time, I wasn't so thrilled about the full moon. Smack in the middle of the Horseshoe's curve sat a single house on a small hill. It was a nice 2-story place. Flowers lining the porch, a bench swing at one end near the front door, a 2-car garage, the whole suburban dream. Only problem? It had the steepest fucking driveway in the neighborhood. Even with a good start, getting up it was a slog. At the top, I'd roll the paper, slide it into the mail slot by the garage's side door, give it a tap to send it in, then turn around and coast down the driveway at full speed. No pedaling needed. That's how it usually went. Not this time. It was a full moon that night, bright as hell even at 5 a.m. The houses, mostly painted white or light colors, reflected the light like beacons. There wasn't a breath of wind either, a rare bonus. No gusts to snatch the paper from my hands or fight against while riding. I rounded the Horseshoe's curve, making good time despite the Sunday paper weighing me down. I'd already knocked out the first half of the route and was itching to finish fast and get back to bed. I pedaled up that brutal driveway, stopping once to push with my sneakers. I dropped the kickstand, hopped off, and started digging in my bag for a paper. The house practically glowed in the moonlight. Bright white paint, red shutters, those flowers. It looked almost pretty. Then I heard it, a creak. I froze, not sure what it was. It sounded metallic, like hinges on a gate, but there were no gates around that I knew of, and none of the Horseshoe houses had fenced yards. Then I heard it again, rising into a squeak. I knew that sound instantly. It was a swing moving. I'd grown up hitting every playground in town. so I recognized the noise those chains make. There was a kid's playground nearby, but no way I could hear it from there. A quick glance confirmed it was empty anyway. 5 a.m., full moon or not, no kids were out. Then the squeak came again, longer this time. The hair on my neck stood up. It was close that I turned back to the house. The bench swing on the porch, hanging from 2 chains, was rocking back and forth. There was no wind to move it, and it'd take a hell of a gust to budge something that heavy anyway. Then it picked up speed, like someone was pumping their legs. My heart started hammering. There was nobody on it, not a damn soul. It was empty, and there was no way someone could hide underneath to push it as a prank. The swing just kept going, higher and higher, all by itself. I was scared shitless but couldn't look away. What the fuck was I seeing? In that moonlight, an empty bench swing was swinging like crazy, and no one was there. Then I heard it, a giggle. A little girl's giggle, maybe 4 or 5 years old, tops. My jaw dropped, and I started shaking. It wasn't some evil laugh or a creepy cackle, just a playful, mischievous giggle, like a kid having fun. And it was coming straight from that empty swing. I couldn't breathe. I'd never been so terrified in my life. Most people would have bolted right then, pedaling away as fast as their legs could go. But no, I was a good paper boy, trophy and all. Pure reflex took over. I yanked a fat Sunday paper from my bag and fumbled with it, trying to roll the bastard up. I had to get it delivered and get the hell out. The air above the swing let out a short chuckle, like whatever was giggling tried to stifle it. The swing kept rocking. I was muttering like a lunatic. Fold, fold, why won't you fucking fold? Finally, I half rolled it and turned to jam it through the mail slot. It wouldn't fit, too damn thick. Why did Sunday papers have to be so huge? I shoved, pulled back, shoved again, shredding the front page with every try. I kept glancing at the swing, praying no one was there, but it was still empty, still swinging. I gave up, rammed the crumpled mess into the slot as hard as I could, half in, half out, and bailed for my bike. I was shaking so bad I couldn't even mount it. I forgot how to ride, dragging it down that steep driveway by one handlebar. At the bottom, I got on, but it felt stuck. I looked down. The kickstand was still down, gouging a line in the dirt. I smashed it up with my heel and pedaled like hell. No more giggles. But the swing rocked higher, like my panic was fucking hilarious to whatever was there. I could still hear the chains squeaking as I tore off. At the next house, I didn't give a shit about paperboy rules. I chucked the paper at the garage door and peeled out before it landed. Same with the next, and the next, just like those damn movies. By the time I finished the route, I might have gone back to proper deliveries. I don't remember. All I could think about was that empty swing and that giggle. I got home, crashed into bed, but didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, scared out of my mind, until the sun came up. The next week, it was back to normal. Afternoon deliveries, same old routine. Come the weekend, I made sure my Walkman had fresh batteries so I could blast Kenny Loggins and Michael Jackson to drown out any creepy-ass giggles. I never heard it again, not that I wanted to. The swing only moved when someone sat in it or during a January blizzard, and even then, it barely budged under the wind. It was heavy. Nothing weird ever happened on my route again. Looking back, it could have been worse. That giggle didn't come with footsteps chasing me off the swing. That'd be a whole other story, probably ending with me dead of a heart attack or locked up in a psych ward. To this day, I don't know what it was. Some say it was a prank. Others think it was a spirit or some kind of sprite. All I know is I've been scared by pranks and ghost stories since. Even had a few panic attacks, but nothing's ever fucked me up like that Sunday morning under the full moon when I heard that giggle. For context, I'm a female student at a community college in Northern California. It's a solid school overall, but the location's a drawback. The building I'm in has 4 floors, with stairs that lead straight out to the street or connect to other parts of campus. Our city ranks 8th or 10th among California's murder capitals. Crime's just part of the deal here, and with that come the usual creeps. I work 40 hours a week, so I end up taking night classes to fit my schedule. Recently, we had a homeless guy flash one of my classmates after class, caught on security footage, obviously not his brightest move. Then there was another incident, unrelated, where some dude was lurking around the women's restroom. He got nabbed too. Since that happened, I've been checking my emails for updates on the latest creep alert, but nothing's come through yet. I was leaving my chemistry class, feeling wiped after our third exam of the semester. I called my boyfriend, Torin, because we'd planned to grab groceries after. I usually take the stairs near the street. It's the fastest way to the parking lot. Torin suggested meeting at Walmart, and I agreed. As I was about to hang up, I noticed a guy standing alone on the first floor with his bike, just staring off. I glanced again to see if he was waiting for someone, but he was just there, blank-faced. Torin said he'd be at the store in 10 minutes, and right then, the guy let out this maniacal laugh, like something straight out of that Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. It sent chills down my spine. "Stay on the line, please. Don't hang up," I said. "There's this guy on the first floor laughing at nothing. Oh God, it's so fucking creepy. He's just standing there." "Okay, I can hear it too," Torin replied. "I'll stay on." I started crossing the building to head for the other stair exit, and that laugh kept echoing behind me. Torin suggested I find another student to buddy up with, but since it was an afternoon class, most people had already cleared out. As I hit the stairs, I caught a glimpse out of the corner of my eye. The guy was moving my way now. I bolted back up, thinking, fuck that, and ran to my classroom to tell my professor, a woman named Lysandra. She reported it to campus police. Still no email update on it, but ever since, that guy's goddamn mortifying laugh sticks with me. I'd like to start by saying I'm a 19-year-old girl, about 5'5" and 110 pounds. To a lot of folks, I'm seen as small and easy to approach. A little backstory. I've been working at a pharmacy for the last year and a half, mostly handling the grunt work, taking out the trash, filing papers, making boxes, that kind of thing on top of my regular prescription filling duties. The pharmacy's in a sketchy part of downtown in a big city, on the third floor of a 4-story building. It faces a busy road out front, but around back, there's an older, run-down residential area where the trash bins sit, fenced in next to the underground parking entrance. Right across the alley from the bins is this beat-up yellow house, barely visible through overgrown trees and weeds. The yard's gated, and I'd never seen anyone in or around it during my daily trash runs. I did notice 2 massive cane corso dogs caged up on the rickety deck, though. Lately, on one of those trips, I kept getting this nagging feeling like someone was watching me. I threw a hesitant glance at the creepy yellow house but didn't see anything unusual. I'm a huge horror fan, so I'm used to getting spooked by cliches like that, creepy houses and all. I spend my days paranoid as hell, always checking over my shoulder, suspicious of every shadow that moves. I figured it was just my imagination running wild, but the feeling wouldn't quit, so I hurried to finish up. As I did, I took one last peek behind me, and there he was. A tall, lanky guy with messy gray hair, wearing a tattered white tank top full of holes and stains, staring right at me from the bay window above the deck. I'd never known anyone lived there. I'd never seen a soul. My customer service instincts kicked in, and I flashed him the politest smile I could muster. He didn't smile back, just kept drilling his eyes into me. After what felt like forever, he slowly backed away, never breaking eye contact. That was my first run-in with him, but fuck, I wish it had been the last. The next few times were normal enough. I'd glance over now and then, nothing but darkness inside the house and a few birds flitting around his yard. That is, until the day that's burned into my brain for good. It was a hot, sunny Tuesday, and I'd worn a navy dress to stay cool. Time came for my trash run, so I grabbed my X-Acto knife for breaking down cardboard, slipped it into my dress pocket, and pulled my little cart of garbage and boxes around to the fenced-in bins. I looked across the alley, and there he was, standing on his deck. He walked over to the cages, let the dogs out, and they bolted down the steps, charging up to the chain-link fence, barking their heads off at me. I tried to refocus on my task, sneaking looks over my shoulder to keep tabs on him. Until the last time I checked, he wasn't on the deck anymore. Instead, he was slinking along the sidewalk outside his fence, half hidden in the shadows of those overgrown trees. He paced back and forth, maybe 30 feet each way, then spun around to do it again. Panic hit me hard, and I started rushing, hurling the cardboard into the bin. Then I heard it, gravel crunching under heavy footsteps. I summoned every ounce of guts I had, turned my whole body to face him, hand gripping the knife in my pocket, ready to fight if I had to. He was less than 10 feet away, head down, staring at the ground, one hand behind his back, the other in his pocket. As he closed in, a voice called out from behind me, off to my left. I turned and saw a young guy, tall, lanky, maybe 23 or 24, named Elton, someone I recognized from the cafe on the first floor. He was holding a trash bag. "Is that your card?" he asked, nodding toward it. Still rattled, I mumbled, "Yeah." He started chatting me up, stepped closer, put a hand on my shoulder, looked me in the eyes, and whispered, "Come with me." He grabbed my card and headed toward the building. I glanced back. The guy from the house was scurrying across the alley to his fence, fumbling with the latch, shoving something into his pocket, and muttering curses under his breath, glaring daggers at Elton. We got to the parking lot by the building, and Elton stopped. "I was heading to the bins when I saw that guy coming toward you," he said. "I figured asking about your cart and sticking close might scare him off, whatever he was planning. You be careful, bring someone with you down here from now on, or come grab me if no one else can." We said goodbye, and I thanked him over and over. After telling my coworkers what went down, I never went to the bins alone again. To Elton from the cafe, that small talk might have seemed pointless and awkward to you, but it could have been the reason I'm still here to say thanks. You're my fucking hero for saving me from what could have been a life or death attack. I'm grateful as hell forever. So this happened about 2 years ago when I was 20. I'm a pretty small woman, and I was out shopping in town by myself. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, and the city center was buzzing, families everywhere, people enjoying the day. I had some time to kill, so I decided to pop over to my grandma's place. Her name's Isolde, and getting there takes a 20-minute bus ride from where I was. I was waiting at the stop when I noticed this guy staring at me. He didn't look much older than me, and I can still picture him in this bright yellow hat. Normally, I don't care if someone looks my way, but this dude was glaring at me with this weird, angry vibe, like I'd pissed him off somehow. Most people at the stop were facing the road, watching for buses, but not him. He had his back to the traffic, eyes locked on me. It gave me a bad feeling, but my bus rolled up, and I just hoped he wouldn't get on. Except he fucking did. I darted to a window seat, and lucky for me, an old lady named Mavis sat next to me. She was like a shield between me and this creep. He stood right by our seat for most of the ride, though he paced around a couple times, acting all twitchy. I was already on edge, texting my boyfriend at the time, Soren, the whole way. The guy hadn't done anything outright, but my gut was screaming trouble. A few stops before mine, Mavis got off, and that's when his behavior got even weirder. He slid into the seat next to me, and I tensed up hard. I wouldn't even look at my phone or text Soren back. Didn't want this guy seeing anything he could use to track me down later. I think he noticed me stiffen, because he got up and went back to either standing by my seat or pacing the aisle. My stop came, and I waited until the last second to hop off. Fucking hell, he got off too. What happened next proved he was after me. I guess he thought he'd throw me off. He ran ahead on the road, glancing back every few steps. That actually gave me my only shot to dodge him. If he'd stayed behind me, I'd have had to either sprint to Isolde's apartment and slam the door before he caught up, or run some other way and hope I hit a safe spot first. I was out of the city center now, barely anyone around to help. So, in that split second, I turned around, started walking the other way, and called my mom, Leora. It's grim, but I figured if something happened, at least she'd know who did it. I told her everything, and she said, "Run for it. There's a little burger joint down the road with a security guard. Just get there and tell them what's up." I checked behind me, The guy was running after me now, and I nearly lost it. I bolted, made it to the burger place before he caught me, and from the window, I saw him cross the road. Guess seeing me duck in there fucked up whatever he had planned. I don't know why he was so fixated on me or what he wanted if he'd caught me. I'm not even sure I want to know. When I was 19, I worked for a company that sent labor out to rural parts of Australia. Basically, you'd tell them when you were free, and they'd ship you off to some remote farm for a few weeks to do whatever needed doing. It was tough work, long hours, but the pay was good, and it could be a blast if you ended up with a decent crew. This happened while I was on a huge property, supposedly about the size of Maryland in the US, 9 hours from Sydney, and the farm itself was a 40-minute drive from the nearest town. In short, it was the middle of fucking nowhere. I was clearing bushland with 3 other guys my age from the city, Kieran, Torin, and Elton. Our boss, a laid-back guy named Soren who owned the place, kept an eye on us while pitching in. That summer was brutal, and one day when the heat hit about 38 degrees Celsius, 100 Fahrenheit, Soren called it quits for the afternoon. He said he knew of a water hole about 25 minutes north on the property. I was up for a swim, but the other guys just wanted to kick back. So Soren and I hopped in one of the work trucks and headed out across the farm. The land was mostly wide, empty stretches with a few patches of scrubby bushland. Soren wasn't much for small talk, so we drove in silence for the most part. About 20 minutes in, though, he perked up and nudged me hard in the ribs. "You see that over there, under those 2 dead trees? If you don't know inland Australia, it's all brown or red, flat and dull as hell, so anything bright stands out like a sore thumb. That's why we were both stunned to spot a big, blue, boxy shape way off in the distance. We veered toward it, and as we got closer, it turned into a massive blue shipping container just sitting there. Soren was baffled. I asked if he knew what it was, but he clearly didn't. He said he hadn't seen it when he'd driven through that spot 5 weeks back and wanted to check it out. I had a bad fucking feeling the whole thing felt off. It's hard to explain, but picture a random, out-of-place object in the middle of a barren nowhere. It screamed trouble. Soren, though, was set on investigating, which made sense since it was his land. Still, I was nervous as hell. We pulled up about 100 meters away. That's when shit got weirder. There was a big diesel generator humming behind it, and each side had a CCTV camera, motion activated, buzzing side to side as they tracked us. I tried talking sense into him. "Soren, with all this security, someone obviously doesn't want us here. Let's just go." He waved me off, saying it was his farm and whoever put this here was trespassing. He wanted in. Despite all the cameras, the huge door just had a small padlock. He grabbed bolt cutters from his toolbox, and after some effort, we snapped it and stepped inside. A blast of cold air hit us. The place was air-conditioned, which felt damn nice in that heat. We fumbled for a light switch, but I could already tell it was some kind of tech setup, flashing LEDs everywhere, that low hum of hard drives working overtime. When we flipped on the lights, we saw a slick but messy office. Giant hard drives like bar fridges lined the walls, stacked 2 or 3 high in spots, plastic storage boxes scattered around, and a few desks with monitors and rolling chairs in the middle. It felt like a fucking dream. None of this made sense. We wandered to the desks, sat down, and poked at the computers, hoping for clues. My heart was racing. I just wanted to bolt. Those cameras had seen us. If anyone was watching, they knew we were here. Soren, though, was dead set on figuring this out, so I sucked it up and started digging through the screens. We weren't tech wizards. Facebook and Word were about our limit. The best I could tell, it was endless streams of computer gibberish, like those old Napster or LimeWire download screens, constantly pulling and logging data across multiple windows. I gave up on that and crept over to the pile of storage boxes at the far end. I was pretty sure no one else was inside, nowhere to hide, but I was still on edge. Against my better judgment, I started rifling through a box. What I found still makes me sick. It didn't take long to realize it was packed with posters, DVDs, and photos, all hardcore, explicit child porn. The worst part? It was all neatly sorted into folders and little boxes. These fuckers were organized. I jumped back, ran to Soren, and could barely spit it out. Mate, get out, dude, child shit, just get the fuck out of here. I dragged him outside, pulled myself together, and explained what I'd seen. We raced back to the house in the truck. The farm had no cell signal. We hadn't brought the satellite phone, so we needed the landline to call the cops. Once we got through, they still had to drive from the nearest station, half an hour past the closest town. We sat there, freaking out, talking nonstop about what we'd seen until they showed up almost an hour later with 2 four-wheel drives. We led them back, and that's when it got worse. The container door was wide open, flames licking out. We had 2 small extinguishers in the trucks, useless. The fire department took an hour to get there, and by then, most of it was ash. An arson report from the feds found almost no trace of the tech we described, just scraps of paper and cardboard. Whoever ran it knew we'd been there, had time to clear out the good stuff, and torch the rest. The property's huge, with tons of ways out, no way to track them. The cops didn't take us too seriously at first, probably our shitty explanation, and by the time aerial surveillance could have helped, it was too late. We pieced it together after. I stayed on it, digging where I could, but with no real evidence of who was behind it, the case went cold. I still keep in touch with Soren. The container's still there, too pricey to move. I'll never shake what I saw in those boxes. You could say I had a rough childhood growing up. Things that happened in the past will haunt me to this day. I'm a 25-year-old female, anxiety-ridden due to multiple past traumas. The story takes place when I was about 13 to 14 years old. At the time, my parents had just separated. My father, Elias, was fighting his illness of alcoholism. My mother, Marisol, a pathological liar, cheater, and, unbeknownst to me and my younger sister at the time, was fighting a drug addiction. As I said, childhood was not easy. When my parents were together, they always fought due to their opposing addictions. So, after they separated, my dad met and fell in love with my stepmother, Clara, and moved far away, losing all contact with us. That a few years down the road, my mom met a man named Dax, who we called Cowboy, and we moved in with him in a terrible house in a new town about an hour's drive from the rest of our family. Cowboy had his own issues with drugs, alcohol, and mental health. He had never been around kids or teenagers, and definitely shouldn't have been around us. My mom, at the time, had issues with men. She always had to have a man in her life, no matter how bad they were. There's this condition where a woman needs to be with a significant other, even if she's treated horribly. It's basically like they need to be the fixer and try to improve that person, although it sometimes ends in abuse. The house we lived in scared me. I had to sleep with the door open to have light shining from the hallway. Yes, I know now it's a fire hazard, but at the time, it was the only way I could sleep. My mom and Cowboy's room was across the hall from mine, and my sister's room was in the basement of the bungalow where we were living. One night, Cowboy was up late with their bedroom door open. Very rare, as they would usually hide away from me and my sister and do God knows what in the confines of their room. It was about midnight or later on a school night, so I politely asked if he could close the door so I could try to sleep or at least turn down their TV. This angered him. He got up in a rage, walked across the hall, and slammed my door, telling me to off, mind my own business, and keep my door closed. I retorted by opening my door again and explained that I was scared of my door being closed. This time, he slammed the door in my face, breaking my nose. Blood, of course, was running down my face, and my mom took one look at me and screamed at him. "Get out of this house now. Look what you did to her nose." My sister, my mom, and I rushed to the hospital to get my nose checked out, then drove to my family's house an hour away for the night. Me and my sister got pulled out of school, not knowing what was going on or where we were going to live. We found out we were going to stay with my grandparents as my mom packed up our stuff. Worried for our safety. One day, my mom came to my grandparents' house after work and told us to get into her car in hysterics. My grandma, Lila, saw this from the kitchen window and ushered us to our friend's house next door, scared, watching the exchange going on outside between my mom and my grandma. My mom raced off, never to be seen again for a few months. At the time, it was confusing, the way my mom was acting and what had happened between her and my grandma to make her leave us for months with no contact. These questions would not be answered until I turned 18. My mom was packing up her belongings from our old house, upset and depressed that she had made her boyfriend leave her because of him breaking my nose. So, she shot up drugs, took our 2 dogs at the time, and dumped them off the side of the road. We had been told she took them to a shelter. She was driving around under the influence, without shoes or her glasses. She's blind as a bat. She thought to herself, seeing it as her kids' fault that this man had left her. She should pick up her kids and drive into a pole and end us all. But on the road, she called my grandma and told her goodbye, saying she was about to die. She pulled up to take me and my sister. My grandma raced out, knowing her plan, and told me and my sister to go and hang out with her friends next door, as she had already informed their mother of her plans. Grandma talked my mom down enough for her to drive to the hospital and admit herself. She then went on to get help for her drug abuse. She's clean now and a very loving mother and grandmother. I'm so thankful for my wonderful grandma for jumping into action so fast before we got into my mom's car. God knows what could have happened to us. Sometimes, people need to work through things to get better. I'm posting this for a friend who had a terrifying experience when she was in high school. She isn't part of this thread and doesn't listen to the podcast but has asked me to keep it anonymous, so let's call her Mira. Myra's parents owned a business and often worked late, sometimes until 9 or 10 at night. Occasionally, one of them would get off early, but most of the time, they would both be gone until after she went to bed. Mira hated being alone at night, and sometimes I'd come over after school to hang out and have dinner until I reached my curfew. Sometimes, I'd even stay in the guest room if I stayed out too late. Most of the time, though, she would just call me for peace of mind and someone to talk to. I didn't mind because we had great conversations, and I felt bad for her that she had to be alone and uncomfortable. One night, she called me like normal, and I was telling her about an upcoming wrestling match out of state. As I was mid-sentence, she said in a shaky voice, I think someone just knocked on my downstairs door. I told her not to worry because it was probably just a neighbor telling her that her outdoor cat had made its way into their yard again, which it had a habit of doing, so this wasn't an uncommon occurrence. I told her to go downstairs and look through the peephole to make sure it was someone she knew. Mira set the phone down to go downstairs and look. A couple of minutes went by before she picked up the phone and said, "There's this creepy-looking old woman outside my door, pounding on it and not saying anything." I didn't know what to say at first. Eventually, I said, "Oh, that's really strange. At least it's not a man or someone who could easily hurt you." I should add that it was winter time, and although it was only around 6, it had already gotten dark. Mira lived in a safe, upper-class neighborhood with a low crime rate. After I asked Mira if she was going to call the police or just wait to see if the woman left, about 5 minutes had gone by, and she said, "I think she's gone." The banging stopped. We were both silent for a few minutes before Mira said something horrifying. I noticed her voice lowered to almost a whisper as she exclaimed, "Oh no." I don't remember if I locked the back door. I then told her to lock her bedroom door and call the police to be safe. Whatever the woman wanted, and as harmless as she may be, you can never really know someone's full intentions. I think we can all agree that it's also strange for an elderly woman to be outside in the freezing cold darkness, knocking on random people's doors. I told Mira to stay on the phone and that I was coming over, but the police should be there before me. I put her on speakerphone in the car and asked her if she could hear anything outside. "No, I don't hear anything," she said. "See," I said, "I highly doubt that a woman would break in, even if you left the back or side door unlocked." A few moments went by before, through my speaker, I could hear a loud banging on what I assumed to be Myra's door. I heard Mira start to cry and yell out, asking who was there. "Is it the police?" I yelled, asking who it was. "Who is that?" Mira yelled. No answer, only continued banging. I could hear Mira crying and yelling at her door, and then the phone was silent. I sped to her house, where thankfully, out front, I could see police lights and Mira talking to a couple of officers. Myra's mom arrived shortly after me, which was when I got the full story. There was a skilled nursing home nearby where Mira lived. Apparently, one of the residents had somehow gotten out of the locked wing where she lived. She wasn't known to be violent by the employees, but was in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's and would often forget where she lived. She would try to get the staff to take her back to her home with her husband. Her husband had passed years back, and Myra's parents had bought the house new when she was born. I guess it's not a very dramatic way to end the story and is actually rather sad. However, being a young girl, knowing someone is outside your room, banging on the door, and not saying a word has to be terrifying. My story starts back in 2016. I'm a 23-year-old girl now, but at the time all this took place, I was 20. I was working at a cafe near my house as a cashier. I managed to make some really good friends, which helped the workdays go by very quickly. We would all hang out after work, drink, and then go back to work the next day, repeating the process. One day, I was working the morning shift with a few of my friends. I was the only cashier on the clock because my friend, Lila, was on break, and it was pretty slow. I was goofing off with my friend Elliot when a guy around my age came up to the register. Elliot somehow knew him, though I didn't think to ask how at the time. They exchanged a quick, friendly greeting, and he ordered a soda that Elliot just gave him for free. I remember thinking it was kind of odd to come into a cafe just to get a soda, but I assumed since he knew Elliot worked there, he knew he could score some free stuff. Elliot and I quickly resumed goofing off behind the counter, and I didn't give it another thought. A few days later, I got a text from a random number that said, "Hey, it's Patrick. I saw you at work with my friend the other day, and I thought you were really cute. I was hoping I could ask you out on a date." I assumed Elliot had given the guy my number. I made a mental note to let her know that I would prefer she asked me next time, but I went ahead and responded because he was a friend of hers. He wasn't the usual type I would go for, and I had just gotten out of a relationship, but I didn't want to be rude. I responded with a quick, "Oh, hey, I remember you. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment, but I'm not in the right place to start dating right now. I just kind of got out of a relationship. We can be friends though, right?" He said he was cool with it and started asking me questions about my last relationship. I explained that I was in a very restricting and controlling relationship. He was really supportive at first and completely took my side. After a few days of texting on and off, he continued to ask me random questions about my ex-boyfriend, and this is when things got a little bit weird. He started to sympathize with my ex, saying subtle things like, "Yeah, I wouldn't want you to hang out with other guys either because they all probably like you," or, "I would probably be mad if other guys got to see you in short skirts." I chalked it up to him attempting to be cute and compliment me, and I decided to just ignore it. Things seemed normal for a while, and he would stop by the cafe to get a soda every once in a while. He was a little guilty of holding up the line with conversation, and I would have to politely ask him to let me take the rest of the customers. About a week and a half had gone by since he had first texted me, and he started to send me messages like, "Are you ready to date yet?" Or, "Do you like me enough to give me a chance?" That's when I started to get really concerned because I realized he had no interest in being friends, and that he was secretly hoping he could change my mind. I wasn't ready to date after a week and a half, especially not someone who sympathized with the things that I hated so much about my last relationship. I told him this, and he got really upset but seemed to understand. Things began to escalate when he started showing up at the beginning of every single shift I worked. The time didn't seem to matter. If I opened, he would show up at 5 a.m. and demand I let him in the store even though we weren't open yet. The worst time was when he showed up at 5 a.m. with a soccer ball. I told him for the millionth time that I couldn't let him in because we weren't open yet. He began to kick the soccer ball up against the glass while I was completing my opening duties. It was extremely distracting and would startle me every time the ball hit the glass. On that particular day, we were getting a large produce shipment, and he dribbled his soccer ball into the truck, running around trying to evade the delivery drivers who were attempting to get him to go away. My manager didn't notice him standing around the door and unlocked it so that the drivers could bring their deliveries into our storage cooler. He slipped in through the door while they were in the back and began to play soccer all around the store while yelling, "Go on a date with me," over and over again. Thank God my manager heard the commotion and yelled at him to leave the store. As soon as the doors were open for business, though, he decided to hang around the register and say really inappropriate things when customers were trying to order. I was more annoyed than anything that he somehow knew my schedule, and I decided to confront Elliot about this when she came into work. He was sitting at a table, watching me. I asked Elliot to help me with something, and we went into the back of the cafe. As soon as we turned the corner, I quietly yelled, "Elliot, why would you give that guy my schedule?" She had no idea who or what I was talking about. I told her that Patrick had been coming in every day at my scheduled times, and she swore she didn't give him my schedule or my phone number. This is when I got really freaked out because she told me they weren't even friends. The only reason she was nice to him that day was because he used to date her friend, and he's a really bad guy. She was scared of him. She told me that I should completely cut off all contact and do my best to avoid him, but didn't go into details about his relationship with her friend. I blocked his number right then and there, and when I left for work, I left out the back door so that he wouldn't see me. Later that night, I got a call from a random number. I was waiting to hear back from my doctor because I had a hospital visit earlier that year, and they had checked some blood samples earlier that week to make sure everything was good. The area code was right, so I answered it. To my horror, I heard Patrick's voice on the other end, saying, "Why did you block me?" He sounded really angry, and I didn't know what to say because I was afraid. Before I could even think of anything to say, you went off on a really angry rant. "Do you think you're too good for me? No wonder your relationship didn't work out. You're just a tease. All you had to do is go on one date with me. Is that too hard for you? This is your last chance. Go on a date with me, or you'll regret it if you don't." Then, in a completely calm voice, he said, "I'll hurt something if you don't." I sat there completely stunned. I was absolutely not going on a date with a psycho, but I was afraid of what he would say or do if I said no. I guess I remained quiet too long for his liking because he said, "Wrong choice," in a low voice and hung up. I was supposed to work the next day, but I get really bad anxiety that makes me feel really nauseous. So I told Elliot what was going on and asked her if she would cover my shift because I was freaking out. Thank God she said yes because, according to Elliot, Patrick came barreling into the cafe, demanding to know where I was. When Elliot told him I was at home sick, he asked her where. Obviously, Elliot didn't tell him where I lived and got the manager to tell him to leave and that he wasn't allowed to come back to that cafe again, or they would involve the police. She also mentioned that as he left, he looked like he was gripping something shiny and long on his side. She only got a quick look but believed it to be a knife. I ended up quitting my job at the cafe because I couldn't handle the anxiety of walking through those doors every day, and I absolutely don't answer unknown numbers. I don't know what I was planning to do or what would have happened if I had gone to work at all, but all I can say is Elliot possibly saved me from serious injury and maybe even saved my life by taking that shift. Something was seriously wrong with Patrick, and I hope I never have to hear his voice or see his face again. So last summer, my buddy Elias and I decided we'd go camping. Nothing fancy, just two guys with a tent, some cheap beer, and a map of the national forest. Figured we'd rough it for a weekend, get away from our crap jobs and the city noise. Elias was always the outdoorsy type, you know, one of those guys who actually owns hiking boots and knows what bear bagging means. Me? I mostly agreed to go because I needed an excuse to drink in nature. We picked this spot deep in the woods, probably too deep if I'm being honest. Elias said he'd been there before and swore it was perfect. Secluded, peaceful, and far enough from other campers that we wouldn't have to listen to someone else's shitty playlist over Bluetooth speakers. Sounded good to me. Privacy is key when you're trying to avoid your existential dread. The drive out there was uneventful. Lots of trees, dirt roads, and me making fun of Elias for his granola snacks. Dude brought like 5 different kinds of trail mix. It's important to have options, he kept saying. Yeah, okay, Gandalf. Whatever helps you sleep at night. When we finally got to the site, it was late afternoon. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees, casting these long shadows across the clearing. It looked nice though, exactly what you picture when you think of camping. There was a fire pit already set up, which made things easier, and the air smelled like pine and damp earth. We pitched the tent pretty quickly, mostly thanks to Elias. I mostly stood around pretending to help, and started gathering wood for the fire. You sure this place is safe? I joked while stacking logs. No serial killers or ghost bears or anything? Elias laughed but didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced toward the tree line like he was checking for something. I noticed it then, a weird vibe, hard to explain. Not scary exactly, just off. Like the forest was holding its breath. Nah man, he said after a pause. Just don't wander off by yourself. Stay close to the campsite. I brushed it off as typical camping paranoia. You hear enough stories about people getting lost or attacked by animals, and suddenly everyone's a survival expert. Still, his tone stuck with me. Sounded more serious than usual. Night fell fast. Once the fire was going, we cracked open our beers and tried to relax. Elias told lame jokes. I roasted marshmallows until they caught on fire, and everything felt normal again. Almost forgot about the earlier weirdness. Almost. Then came the noises. At first, I thought it was just the wind rustling through the leaves. Totally normal, right? Except it wasn't constant. It came in bursts, like something moving through the underbrush. Faint crunches of twigs and dry leaves. Sometimes it sounded close, other times farther away. Every time it stopped, the silence felt heavier than before. Probably just deer, Elias muttered without looking up from his beer. They get curious sometimes. Sounded plausible. Except deer aren't usually this stealthy. And they definitely don't circle a campsite for 20 minutes straight. I didn't say anything though. Didn't want to seem like a wuss. Plus, the fire was warm, the beer was cold, and honestly, I wanted to believe it was nothing. Denial's a hell of a drug. A little later, things got worse. It started with a sound I couldn't place. Kind of like a low whistle, but wetter. Imagine blowing into a straw halfway submerged in water. Gross, right? Yeah, that's how it felt hearing it. It echoed through the trees, soft enough that I almost convinced myself it was my imagination. But Elias heard it too. He froze mid-sip, bottle halfway to his mouth. What the fuck was that? Your turn to tell me it's nothing. I shot back, trying to keep my voice light. It came out shaky instead. He didn't respond, just stared into the darkness beyond the firelight. His face was pale, eyes wide. Not the reaction you expect from Mr. Outdoorsman. The whistling happened again, closer this time. Louder, followed by another noise that sent chills down my spine. A low, guttural growl. Not animal, not human. Somewhere in between. Like listening to static on an old radio, but alive. That's when the fire flickered. Not the gentle crackle of burning wood, but a sharp, violent dimming. Like something had passed between us and the flames. Elias cursed under his breath and threw another log onto the fire. It flared back up, but the warmth didn't reach me anymore. Felt like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Okay, fuck this, I said, standing up. We should pack up and leave. Tonight. Elias gave me this look, part fear, part guilt. We can't. Why the hell not? He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. No signal. Of course. Even if we could call for help, we're miles from the car. It's pitch black out there. We'd never make it. Great. Just great. Stranded in the middle of nowhere with God knows what lurking in the woods. Felt like a bad horror movie setup. Except there was no audience to laugh at how stupid we were. The noises kept coming. Closer each time. The whistling grew louder, sharper, until it sounded less like a whistle and more like screaming. High-pitched, distorted, like feedback from a speaker. It bounced around the trees, impossible to pinpoint where it was coming from. And then the smell hit us. Rotten eggs mixed with something metallic. Sulfur, maybe. Either way, it burned my nose and made my stomach churn. Elias gagged beside me, dropping his beer. The bottle shattered against a rock, spilling foam everywhere. "What the fuck is that?" I whispered, clutching the flashlight like it was a weapon. He shook his head, lips pressed tight. Didn't trust himself to speak. Whatever it was close now. The shadows around the fire seemed darker, thicker, swallowing the light inch by inch. I swear I saw movement in them, shapes twisting and writhing, just out of focus. Every time I blinked, they changed position. And then the whisper started. Soft at first, barely audible over the crackling fire. Words I couldn't understand, spoken in voices that shouldn't exist. Some were deep and gravelly, others high and shrill. They overlapped, layered on top of each other until it sounded like 100 people talking at once. Only problem? We were alone. Or at least, we thought we were. Elias grabbed a stick from the fire and held it out like a torch. Smart move, except the light did jack shit against whatever was out there. If anything, it pissed it off. The growling returned, louder now, accompanied by a new sound, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, circling the campsite. Breaking branches with each step. It wasn't running, wasn't rushing. It knew we were trapped. Do something, I hissed, backing toward the tent. Like what? Elias snapped, panic creeping into his voice. Throw rocks at it? Hope it gets bored and leaves. Fair point. Still, doing nothing felt worse. The footsteps stopped directly behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, and shone the flashlight into the trees. Nothing. Just empty forest. But I could feel it. Watching. Waiting. And then it spoke. Not with words, not exactly. More like a feeling shoved into my brain, raw and jagged. It wasn't angry or sad or happy. It was hungry. Ancient. Endless. It wanted something from us, though I couldn't tell what. All I knew was that it was close, so close, and it was laughing at us. I dropped the flashlight. Battery died instantly, plunging us into near-total darkness. The fire sputtered and went out, leaving only the moonlight filtering through the canopy above. Silver beams illuminated the clearing just enough to see them. Shapes stepping out of the shadows. Dozens of them. Humanoid but wrong. Too tall, too thin, joints bending in directions they shouldn't. Their faces, if you could call them that, were blank masks of featureless flesh, smooth and white as porcelain. No eyes, no mouths, no noses. Just empty voids where expressions should be. They moved slowly, unnaturally silent despite their size. Surrounding us. Closing in. Elias screamed. Loud, primal, the kind of scream that tears your throat raw. He swung the burning stick wildly, flames licking at the nearest figure. It didn't flinch. Didn't burn. Just tilted its head like it was curious why we were resisting. I backed away, tripped over a root, landed hard on my ass. Pain shot up my spine, but I barely registered it. All I could do was watch as the figures advanced, their movements jerky yet precise. One of them reached for me. Long, skeletal fingers brushing against my cheek. Ice cold, like touching a corpse. My vision blurred, filled with flashes of images I couldn't comprehend. Cities crumbling. Oceans boiling. Stars dying. Eternity collapsing into itself. And then everything went black. Woke up disoriented, lying next to the smoldering remains of the fire. Sunlight streaming through the trees. Birds chirping like nothing happened. Elias was gone. No sign of him anywhere. Tent torn apart, gear scattered. Backpack missing. Spent hours searching for him, yelling his name until my voice gave out. Found footprints leading deeper into the woods, but they disappeared after a few yards. Like he vanished into thin air. Cops didn't believe me. Said I probably wandered off drunk and hallucinated the whole thing. Searched the area anyway, came up empty. Case closed. Been 6 months since then. Haven't slept more than 2 hours at a time. Keep seeing those figures in my dreams. Same blank faces, same hunger. Sometimes I wake up and swear I hear whispers outside my window.